Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Heart to Heart with Patty Mulauzi with yours truly. I'm sure you know by now, your girl Patty. Thank you for joining me today. Today's conversation is not an easy one, but we need to have it. Today we're going to talk about something that lives in the shadows of so many of our lives. Childhood trauma. It's a heavy topic, but it holds the key to our healing. So let's take a deep breath and dive in. Childhood trauma is a phrase we often hear, but what does it mean? Imagine a scenario where a little girl sits alone in her room, clutching her knees to her chest, as the sound of her parents shouting echoes through the house. She doesn't understand why they're angry, but she feels the weight of their pain in her tiny heart. That's trauma. It's not just about the big, dramatic moments, the abuse, the neglect, the loss. It's about the small, quiet wounds that cut just as deep. The times a child feels unseen, unheard, or unloved. The moments when they're told to stop crying or be strong, when all they need is a hug. Trauma is the emotional scar tissue that forms when a child's needs aren't met. It's the pain they carry because someone didn't know how to love them the way they needed to be loved. And here's the thing. Trauma doesn't just live in the mind. It lives in the body. It's in the way someone flinches at raised voices. The way they freeze when someone gets too close. The way they overthink every word they say because they're afraid of being rejected. It's the invisible weight they carry, even when they think they've moved on. So what causes it? Imagine a scenario where a father comes home from work, exhausted and frustrated. He snaps at his child for making too much noise, not realizing that his anger is echoing the way his own father treated him. Trauma happens when a child's sense of safety is shattered. It could be because of a parent's anger, a caregiver's absence, or even a society that tells a child they're not enough because of who they are. But here's the hard truth. Most of the time, the people who hurt us were hurt themselves. They were just passing on what they knew. That doesn't excuse their actions, but it helps us understand why they happened. Imagine that little girl again, now grown up, sitting in her own home. She hears her child laughing loudly, and instead of smiling, she feels a surge of irritation. In that moment, she hears her father's voice in her head telling her to be quiet. She realizes she's carrying the pain of her past, and it's affecting how she parents her own child. Trauma doesn't just go away. It lingers. It festered. And what feeds us? Silence. Shame. The belief that we're broken. That we're unworthy of love. Imagine a scenario where a young boy is told to man up when he cries. He learns to bury his emotions, to hide his pain. Years later, as an adult, he struggles to connect with others because he's never learned how to express his feelings. He feeds his trauma every time he tells himself, it wasn't that bad, or I should be over it by now. He feeds it when he buries his pain instead of facing it. And sometimes he feeds it by recreating the same patterns that hurt him in the first place, because it's all he knows. Imagine that boy, now a man, sitting in a therapist's office. He's finally ready to face his pain, but it's terrifying. He spent his whole life running from it, but now he realizes he can't outrun his own heart. The more he ignored his trauma, the louder it screamed. It wasn't until he stopped and listened, really listened, that he began to heal. And this is the hardest part. Why do we pass trauma on? Imagine where a mother who was never shown affection as a child struggles to hug her own children. She loves them deeply, but she doesn't know how to show it. There's a famous saying that goes, hurt people hurt people. We learn how to love from the people who raised us. If they didn't know how to love us well, we don't know how to love ourselves or others well either. Imagine that mother years later watching her daughter play with her own children. She sees the warmth and affection she was never able to give, and it fills her with both joy and sorrow. In that moment, she realizes her daughter has broken the cycle. She has learned to love in a way that her mother never could, and it gives her hope. But there's hope. We can break the cycle. Imagine a scenario where a young woman sits down with her journal, ready to face the pain she's been carrying for years. She writes about the moments that hurt her, the moments that shaped her. She cries, she rages, she grieves, and then slowly she begins to heal. She learns to parent herself in the ways she needed but never received. She learns to love herself and others with intention and compassion. Healing isn't easy. It's messy. It's painful. But it's also the most beautiful thing we can do for ourselves, for our children, for the generations to come. We have the power to rewrite the story, to say the pain stops here, to say I am worthy of love and so are you. So let's do the hard work. Let's face our pain. Let's break the chains of trauma, not just for ourselves, but for the ones who come after us. Because every tear we shed and every wound we heal is a step toward a brighter future. And that future is worth fighting for. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Share this, it might help someone who needs to hear it. From me to you, have an amazing week. Take care and keep your hearts open.